Hello and welcome to Microsoft Virtual Academy. I'm Thomas Dawkins and I'm here with
Eric Downing.
Today we're going to share with you a MTA course called Software Testing Fundamentals. MTA stands for Microsoft Technology Associates, which is a certification that we have that is kind of our entry-level certification in our certification tree. So the Software Testing Fundamentals course is 6 modules. First, we'll go into testing fundamentals, where we'll talk about some of the basics relative to software and hardware, fundamentals of programming, software testing, and then introduce application lifecycle management to you. After that, we'll move into testing methodologies, where we'll talk about testing techniques, different testing levels and testing types. We'll then move into creating software tests, which we talk about testability, feature testing, and also how we appropriately scope test cases. From there, we'll move into Module 4, where we talk about managing testing projects. So we'll talk about milestones, the agile process, and distributed teams. We'll then go into Section 5, where we really talk about working with bugs, so how to detect them, how do we log them, how do we manage them moving forward. And then finally, we'll talk about automating software testing, which is really key, very important. Huge cost savings for a number of companies as they automate their test projects. So we'll talk about those strategies, how to write automated tests, and then also how do we manage test scripts. So let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned once before, module number 1 will focus on software testing, software and hardware components, the fundamentals of programming, and introduce to you application lifecycle management. So in this section, we'll talk about and cover measuring software quality and testing benefits. We'll also go into operating systems, network data, hardware and software, and how that relates to software and software testing. With each module, there'll be a number of guiding questions that we have made available for you. So the first question is, what is the purpose of testing during the software development process? How can software quality be measured? And then finally, what's the role of the operating system in a computer system? Seems like a pretty easy question to answer, doesn't it, Eric?
That's right.
So first, let's talk about understanding software testing. Now, software testing is critical. And you do this on a day-to-day basis, Eric. It really measures the quality of an application or project. When you think about a bug or an error in the code, what does that do to the application itself?
Well, what that's doing is it's giving the end user a result that's unexpected or undesirable, whether that's in the code or that's in the logic.
Yeah, so these tests help to find and correct those defects that we see in the code, which I think is very important. We also look at these tests to look at logic and also some of the functionality that's associated with the application, like security or usability or those types of things.
That's right.
So software testing is important as we think about that, as you think about developing applications. Nicely enough, and it's really important, is it also helps to reduce the cost of developing a program or an application.
Right.
I remember when I was at TAM in services, it's really interesting to look at what the costs are associated with having to dig for a bug. It cost our business groups a lot of money to pay for support people to go and deal with these, with problem applications. That's why Microsoft spends a lot of time, and we have people like yourself, SDETs, that are really focused on testing our software. When you think about this, what do you see as some of the benefits relative to software testing, and how does that impact our customers?
Well, the big benefits are going to be the loyalty and the word of mouth and the market share. And then if you're reducing costs for your end user, that's a really big deal.
Let's talk about some other benefits associated with testing. We talked a little bit about how it reduces the cost, not only for Microsoft, but it also reduces the cost for the end user, especially when it relates to training and user support. What are some of the other
That's
things?
right. And as we just said, user satisfaction is a big deal to Microsoft.
It is. It's huge. So Lord Kelvin, back in the late 1800s, basically said, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And that being said, if you think about how we manage applications, if we can't define good ways to measure how we, the efficiencies of our products, then it's hard for us to manage those. So there are many different types of ways to measure, software test. Can you talk a little bit about some of the options that are out there and available?
Yeah, sure. Metrics are always a big part of my job and a big part of the conversation when it comes to testing. Performance metrics, reliability metrics. There's a lot of bug metrics out there, and they're all agreed upon within your team. You got to work with your test team, your development team, your program management on what kind of metrics you're going to follow, and how you're going to report those out.
Okay. So now let's talk about understanding the computer systems. Now, I look at this as being rudimentary and very basic, so bear with me as we cover this topic, but I think it's important to level set. The hardware in a computer system refers to all the physical elements of that computer system, like the keyboard, the mouse, hard drives, the CPU itself. There is software that is key and very important to that operating system because this controls all the allocation and the usage and the space, hard disk space, that's core to being able to manage not only the operating system but also applications that are built on that platform. And when I say platform, I'm talking about the operating system. Microsoft has multiple platforms. We have our Windows 8.1 platform, which is really on our Surface. We have our server platform. We also have our Windows Phone platform. So all of those have a flavor of an OS that applications get built on. There's also device drivers, and what happens is people have to develop these device drivers so that they can work with the operating systems themselves. So those device drivers also have to be tested, right?
That's right. And another important component that we have to take a lot of consideration of is the network. So simple things like every application is going to use the network in many ways. So your application is going to talk to your SQL Server database. The SQL Server database is going to have to hit the network for other reasons. So those are always come into play when we're designing and developing our test scenarios.
So we had a number of questions that we talked about at the very beginning of the module. What is the purpose of testing during the software development process? Eric?
So most basically, that's to identify and report out the bugs. Now, it does go farther than that the more advanced you get. So as far as you become more advanced, you're going to start reporting out the quality of your feature, and then as you move up in your leading projects, it's the overall quality of your solution.
Next question is, how can software quality be measured? We talked a little bit about that. Give us some more detail there.
That's right. So you're going to be coming up with the metrics that your team is going to follow and your team's going to be interested in. So you're going to design and develop those metrics at the very beginning. Those are going to go into your test plan. A great example of that is the severity of the bugs found in a particular area and the counts of the bugs found in that area. That's going to become really important as you get further into the test pass and further into the project to determine if your coverage is actually heavy enough in that area or if you need to allocate more resources to it, write more test cases around it. If you're finding an area that's particularly buggy, you need to do your research on that.
And then finally, what's the role of the operating system in a computer system?
So the operating system is going to allocate your resources, and it's going to also handle the interaction between the user and the application that they're trying to use.
Great.